Good afternoon and welcome to Promo Perspectives. It's a podcast presented by Sage, dedicated to giving promotional product suppliers and distributors tips, tricks, and insights to help them grow their businesses. I'm Gabe Senior Marketing Coordinator here at Sage. Today we are continuing our series on marketing strategies, talking about marketing with a small team for a small business. And I'm joined today by my friend, William Rubsamen. Welcome to the podcast.
How are you doing?
Doing good, man. How are you?
Oh, man, I'm great. Today's been a long day.
Been driving all around, huh?
Yeah, I was over in Sherman, Texas for a photo shoot this morning.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do in your company?
So Whirlix Design is the company I work for, and we do outdoor commercial playground equipment. We do various other structures as well, splash pads and shades. But, you know, I'm very blessed and very privileged to get to be a part of such a cool team, be a part of kids' lives, and do some pretty cool stuff.
That is, I used to work for a small business too that worked in a very similar space. We sold school furniture. So it was kind of a very similar deal where you're a small business and getting to work improving kids' lives. Now, I think a lot of our audience might be wondering, what the heck does this have to do with promo? But we've been doing this series on marketing, and at first I did an episode that was just general marketing strategies, right? And what I think a lot of people might have taken away from that is there's a lot that goes into a marketing plan.
Oh, yeah.
And not everybody is going to have, Sage has a pretty decently sized marketing team. We've got video producers, we've got graphic designers, we've got copywriters, we've got project managers. So these grandiose marketing strategies, it's a little more feasible to execute all this stuff. But a lot of our audience, I assume you guys, these are small distributors in our industry, are more likely going to be like Whirlix, where it's a small team. And is it just you in the marketing department?
So we've grown. We've been very blessed to have grown very recently. So it was actually just two of us to start. The owner's mother was the first person who was on board. She kind of kicked things off. She has 20 years of experience in marketing. So she had a wealth of knowledge that I had the opportunity to kind of, exploit and learn. And I came on board about 4.5 years ago. And now we are very blessed to have brought in another full-time employee who's going to be helping us on a lot of our marketing for social media and trade shows and events.
And I think that's going to be a very similar story to the distributors in our audience too, especially like you said, the owner's wife being the person. These are largely mom and pop owned businesses in our industry. Well, so before we dive into some of the specifics, that'd be fun kind of tell them a little bit about how we met in the first place.
Yeah.
Want to tell that story?
Yeah. So you and I had the opportunity to go to our alum and go sit down with a bunch of students and kind of chat with them about marketing and what the field's like and, what to expect after college. And you and I were paired up at a table and we just kept going to town back and forth and got to share a lot of great, perspectives, got to hear a lot of interesting things from students and some of the struggles and challenges that they're facing with being students that are graduating right now, and a lot of things that they're interested in, which I'm very passionate about. Some AI upgrades and stuff like that have been coming to light over the last year or so. So it was very fun to kind of chat with them about that, kind of give them kind of the realistic view of how it's used in the professional space, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was an interesting experience because I was in my mid-20s when I was going to that college. It was the University of Texas at Dallas. And even then, I had noticed being older by a few years than a lot of the students. Now going back at almost 30, and it's amazing how young these students are. But what really interested me is that their questions were not really, how do I get a job? What graphic design tool do you use? It was, what is your work day like? What is your work-life balance like? And then a lot of questions about AI, which we'll get into because you and I definitely have some thoughts on that. But kind of sticking with the theme of the episode, can you kind of tell me a little bit about what it is like where you are with a really small team? And I assume you got to wear a lot of hats. What does your day-to-day, your week-to-week look like?
Yeah, I mean, it can vary. And I'm sure, your viewers can also agree because they've probably experienced this. But one moment you're doing social media content, next you're writing an email, next you're preparing to go to a special event or updating your website or improving your SEO, and it's compounding. And our marketing department even supports the IT aspect of our business because there's nobody who can do that. And so we just we do quite a few things, and over time we've figured out processes and things that we can do to save time and improve our efficiencies, and become quite successful over the last 8 years since the business was established.
How do you decide what you're going to work on? Because again, Sage has a pretty good team, and we have a project management software that we use so that our VP can strategize what projects we're working on when. I more or less know what I'm going to be doing on a given day, sometimes weeks in advance. What does that look like for you, and how do you decide where to put your energy?
Yeah, so for a small team and even one person, you have to know what your goal is and what you're trying to drive towards. Because I'll share you an interesting story. When I started, Maura, she had a list, an Excel spreadsheet with hundreds of lines of tasks. And it was these things that, whether it was various departments were asking for, or it was her own personal goals that, she was trying to achieve. There was a lot of things that needed to be accomplished, but there's not a lot of time, and time is very finite. And so what we realized and we started doing is we came together and would start to focus on a very linear goal, whether it was brand awareness or thought leadership, and put a lot of stock into understanding how do we accomplish those things. And then we would understand what kinds of tasks or tactics we would take. And then from there, the owner's super into SMART goals. So we set a lot of SMART goals. And now that we know our goal, we kind of have a general direction, a kind of roadmap in which we want to go. Then we can go and start working on things and start actually achieving expectations. But goals are really what's going to drive the success, whether it's the overarching goal or monthly goals that you have for yourself or weekly goals. Goals are going to be what we have seen to be the most effective way of actually getting things done.
I'm so glad you said that. That main episode that we did to start this series, I kicked it off talking all about SMART goals, right? Yeah. And I think it's like putting the cart before the horse kind of a thing, where if you're not setting, and if you haven't listened to that episode yet, first of all, please do. I put a lot of love into that episode. Setting these goals, otherwise what you're doing is you're just spending time and money creating content that's just aimless, and you're just throwing it out there. But if you have a goal, you can decide what you're going to do. So on that main episode, I talked about all these different marketing channels, right? There's your website, the organic parts of your website, your blogs, your content, your SEO. Yeah. There's the paid parts of your website, your paid search on Google. There's social media, which also has organic and paid aspects. There is content marketing, creating videos and graphics and things like that. How do you decide what you're going to do? And the answer is you look at what's going to help achieve your goals, right?
Yes.
Do you have any particular channels that you have found to be kind of your go-tos when it comes to the kind of marketing that you do at your business?
A channel is really different for any kind of business depending on what they are going to be able to deliver valuable content to their market, right? So we've seen a lot of success, particularly in video. So we tend to lean towards, YouTube and Instagram and short form content and things like that. But every business will be different. And I really do like video specifically right now because it seems to be doing and ranking very, very well. And that's been the trend for the last few years, right? And you're seeing it even more with, the advent of AI, and you've seen how that has been able to make written content fairly easy. So Google has been kind of adjusting how they rank video-based content. And so there's a nice little opportunity when it comes to video content and trying to leverage YouTube or short-form content. It's incredibly powerful to try it out. And the barriers to entry for video is not as high as it used to be. Everyone's got a smartphone. And so they even have filters you can buy on Amazon and add on your phone and get some kind of video put together. Something, whether it's talking about a particular product or service or whatever it may be, you're delivering that important message that's being probably boosted a little bit better than potentially other avenues.
We actually put out a couple of episodes about video production just a few weeks ago because we, again, part of us having such a good sized team here at Sage is we do have specialists, and our video team, they are industry recognized. LaFonso and Taylor put together some really great stuff. But he talked about exactly what you just said, which is you don't need these multiple tens of $1,000 Blackmagic cameras to put together. Like you said, you can get an iPhone. Really what it comes down to is more of like the creative passion behind what you do with the tools that you have, understanding who you are as a company, what's your brand identity, what's the message you're getting through, and then using the tools you have to put that kind of thing together.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you said, it's going to differ. Like for Sage and for Whirlix and for the small business I used to work for, we're probably going to be more heavily focused on brand authority as a goal, I'm going to assume, because for your company, I assume it's largely contract-based, right?
Yeah, we do a lot of contracts, but we also like to create content to kind of boast the spaces we've made and also provide content for a lot of these parks and recreation departments that typically don't even have marketing. So we almost like are an extension for them, creating something that they can get their community excited and rally behind it. And that's really why we've invested a lot into it. And it's done very well for us in terms of like creating conceptual context and when you're designing a playground, because it's, there's some that can kind of, come prepared, but most of the time it's a very unique experience. And so you give someone a visual representation and people are all over it.
So a little bit ago, you mentioned AI, and I'm very excited to talk this about you because when we were at that alumni event and we were answering these questions for these students, they had a lot of questions about it because I think colleges might be just a little bit behind in terms of actually having organized education about how to use these AI tools for their students. And they were surprised that we use them and then more surprised how we use them. So why don't you kind of tell me, we'll get into the specifics, but broadly, how does AI serve you as a marketer?
So AI is a great resource to help me save some time, right? So I have a lot of things on my plate. So a lot of times I use it to help me organize thought processes, ideas, brainstorming, or outlines. I've used it to prepare scripts around, various notes that I've had prepared or at least give me some level of structure to go off of. And it, a lot of the time sink, especially in marketing, you have to be creative a lot. So, you can get kind of tired, a little worn down. And so it really helps you kind of break through that and keep things fresh and maybe find things that you would have never thought of, which is kind of fun to play around with. And so that's what I've used a lot for. And it's been incredibly helpful to save time and allows me to do other things that I can allocate time to and then focus on.
I think what it's really cool about it too is how it can be used at every step in the process. Like my main episode that I did on this was kind of broken into build, execute, measure, right?
Yeah.
Which, like from a production standpoint, is like pre-production, production, post-production. I think a lot of people think of AI from the production standpoint, like it can write content, it can generate images, and it can do a very good job and get you moving. But
it sure can.
It can also help you plan.
Yes.
Like even if you don't have your SMART goals yet, talk to this thing like a human, right? Like especially these large language models like Gemini or ChatGPT. Be like, hey, I'm William and I work for Whirlix and this is what we do. This is who our average customer is. What are some SMART goals that might fit the company?
Yeah.
And it's gonna be guessing.
Yeah.
But it's gonna be some well-educated guesses.
Yeah.
And even if the first goal it gives you is not accurate, if it's like, well, okay, a 60% increase in leads in this market is not right.
Yeah.
But it might be like, but here's a more reasonable number for that. Here's a more reasonable market for that. And then when you're that's like the planning process. And then when you've chosen the channels you're going to do, it can help you write that video. It can help you write that script. So all that to say that AI can be used for all different steps of the marketing process. But what are some specific AI tools that you use and why?
So I do like an AI model called Claude. It's a great writing model. It's something I've used a lot, and particularly for outlining or giving me some kind of direction. I have used it to also help me when it comes to writing meta descriptions, when I'm doing some SEO work, or I'll take notes or a draft of a blog that I've written or an email I've written, and I can't get the tone quite right or incorporate a certain kind of messaging that I'd like to have included. And so I will, leverage it to kind of improve against or give me more examples in which I could build on, right? So it's a great way. I will say I don't take it, whatever it gives me, and just copy and paste it. I just use it strictly to get feedback because, like your viewers, right? If they're a one-man show, you need someone to kind of spitball against, right? And get some ideas, get some inspiration, get some direction. And much like you and I are talking right now, you can talk to an AI model like that. And so I've used Claude quite a bit. It's a fantastic writing model. It has a great approach towards like a natural language, but by no means should it be used like just a copy and paste. It's great for brainstorming and outlining.
Oh yeah, and we're a software company in our industry, and we have AI tools baked in, and a lot of it is for idea generation, right? Like we have, even on just like our product search module, it's the idea wizard, and it is not to necessarily select the exact products that the clients are looking for, but you can be like, I've got this client that's got a golf tournament coming up and they want something different, and it will give you like all kinds of specific things. And those are just, our AI tools are obviously very focused on business operations, but there's all kinds of other ones out there. I'm a big fan of Gemini. I like Gemini because it can research on the internet. This is Google's AI tool, so they have one of their modules is called the Deep Research module, and you can say, I'm doing a podcast about decoration methods, totally hypothetical example and not at all an episode that's about to come out. And you can ask it to make you a report of all of the most popular decoration methods and how and why they're used. And the thing is, like you said, you gotta fact check the AI, but the nice thing that I like about Gemini is when you use that Deep Research module, it cites its sources. It says, I got this piece of information from here. So you can go verify that is what that says. And it's not always going to, because we love AI and we're kind of evangelizing it, but like you said, we're not here to say it's a perfect tool. It makes, especially these language model ones, make a lot of mistakes. Because they work like that predictive text on your phone where it guesses what you're going to say next.
Yeah.
It's just a hyper complicated version of that.
Yes.
But yeah, I love AI. I think it's great use, and I think it's something that students obviously were very interested in learning about it, and I think people already working in marketing probably aren't using it to its full extent.
Oh yeah, you're exactly right, because there are tons of AI models that people can kind of exploit and use. And I guess the key really is understanding how they work and how they function. There's another AI model as you're talking. I'm assuming the promotional products industry is very competitive, right? So you can even use this Google extension that leverages ChatGPT. It's called HARPA. And you can use it to evaluate competitor sites and stuff like that, and just kind of see what's going on in terms of what they're ranking for, or maybe things that they're focusing on. And you can kind of get a glimpse into things, which is, that's like a cool little tool that you can kind of use to kind of give some direction or idea or what's going on in the marketplace, or if you see a trend, you can use those softwares to summarize that information, maybe do a keyword density analysis on someone's page, which would be pretty neat.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of great ways to use it, and there's so many tools at people's disposal. You just got to know how to properly use it.
So in that vein, kind of going back to what it's like running your marketing department with such a limited team, what does competitive analysis kind of look like in your day-to-day or your week-to-week?
Yeah, so we have quite a few competitors, and we are always just trying to understand what they are spending their time in, whether it's inclusive play, whether it's focusing on the grant guides that a lot of organizations put out to try to help communities find funding. We try to kind of keep up with what's going on with that, and I have used softwares to help me kind of understand what they're blogging about, or what kind of web pages they're building, and what their keywords they're focusing on. And so our competitive evaluation is probably like a quarterly thing. You don't have to do it a lot, but you need to have a pulse on it, and we just maintain a simple pulse on it.
And I think, and then maybe some channels involve it a little bit, like you mentioned, SEO and stuff like that. You're probably doing keyword research and comparing popularity of things like that.
Yeah. So you can go on to, public information is public information, and you can use that public information to, it used to be where you can kind of go to someone's page and just kind of evaluate someone's context. Now you can use a software like HARPA to skim the content, give you a top 10 keywords or phrases used and the keyword density, and then you take that and you go into a free tool like Keyword Planner, plug in the keywords, maybe see what the competitive nature is like for those keywords, and see if there's maybe a topic or a piece of information that you want to start maybe having a conversation about. Maybe you've talked to customers in the past and they are actively interested in X, Y, and Z, and you're like, perfect. I've seen that on my competitors' sites. I've had conversations with people like that. Maybe the sales team has told me about, they're actively interested in learning or getting more information about this. You're like, great, I can write content about this. I can create a video about this. I can do something that's going to provide context or some kind of supportive information to our customer base.
Something you mentioned there too was that free tool. Mm-hmm. And that's another interesting part of having a small business is we talked earlier about how much time do you have, and that's one resource. Obviously, money is another budgetary resource, and some of these marketing tools can be kind of expensive, the Adobe Creative Suite and things like that. What tools do you use? Are there any that you use free alternatives or versions for, or any that you find particularly worth the money?
We're very fortunate and blessed to live in a world where there's a lot of free tools to sign up for, or at least tools to get signed up for and use the free version, right? And so I'll go to social media, for example. It's pretty easy. Most people want to build their social media in some capacity. And when I came on board 4.5 years ago, one of my first projects was social media. And so at the time, we were just posting content whenever we had time or could remember to. And I was like, well, maybe we should find a way to come up with a process or something that makes it a little bit easier to manage. And, there's Hootsuite, right? Schedule free software. You can do the paid version, but it's free to sign up. So you sign up for it, you start using the free version. Well, next thing you know, we're able to start being more consistent, have some frequency to our content. And then we're like, okay, well, instead of just doing pictures, how do we make it look interesting? Maybe add text on the front of the picture or, make it a little bit more compelling than just a static image. And then we're like, okay, well, Canva has a free kind of sign up version. So there's a lot of softwares and things, depending on your goals and what you're trying to achieve. There's a lot of free things that you can sign up for and just kind of experiment with, try out, explore. And it's important to try out and experiment and explore because it might not jive up. You don't want to invest in something if you're not truly ready to spend the money on it on a regular basis, especially if you're not using it. And so that's what we've done, and it's been very successful. We operate on a very low budget, especially when I first started. Our budget was almost nil. We had to just make it work. It was all organic. Everything had to be just basic. And so you have to think outside the box. You have to use the resource at your disposal and find a way, and Google will give you that direction. And now we have AI, so you can even plug it into Gemini and say, give me top 25 free editing softwares. And they won't be perfect, but they'll at least get your foot in the door and give you a chance to experiment and try and engage with it, or even affordable ones. You don't have to go in on Adobe. You don't have to go all in on the highest thing that whatever TikTok star is using. Just find a basic start towards a direction you're trying to achieve, and then it'll all go from there.
I ran into that when I used to work for a concert venue, and that was a very, very small operation. There were 3 of us, but those 3 of us constituted like a third of the entire corporate staff, right? Not counting, obviously, all the people that worked in the restaurant and the venue and stuff like that. And I came in, honestly, a little snobby about like the quality of tools and materials that I wanted to use, because I had been pretty blessed at a previous role where the owner would just throw money at marketing. If I wanted an Adobe subscription, he would give it to me. They sent me to school to learn how to use a DSLR and use nice fancy cameras. And of course, if you have the expertise and knowledge in those things, you can get features and quality and functionality that you're not going to get out of the cheaper tools. But it's kind of like when you are really into anything, the layman is not going to notice some of those minor differences, and that layman is the person you're making these marketing materials for. So I remember going to this concert venue, and we hired these 2 employees to work with me, and they were like, we don't know how to use a DSLR. We're using our iPhone cameras. I'm not going to wait 30 minutes for Adobe to boot up on my PC. We're just going to use Canva. And like I said, I had some snobby preconceptions going in, and I was like, no, it's going to look unprofessional, First of all, specifically, iPhones and Canva create some of the most professional looking, and Canva is such a powerful graphic design tool. Now, for video editing, I'm curious, do you use Adobe, or do you use a cheaper alternative for that?
So I use a software called Filmora. It's a pretty cheap software, but it does exactly what we need. It's not going to give me that highest quality. I do have to kind of finagle some things around a little bit. But, to get started, it was great. And honestly, I've gotten used to it and had the opportunity to explore it over a long period of time. So I don't know if I'd want to switch.
Kind of back yourself into that.
Yeah. And Canva, they have a really great, a great kind of editing tool. It's better for short form content like Reels. So if you're trying to create Reels and you don't want to invest in a software, I don't know, I can't remember if that was a paid version, but
well, the paid version of Canva is cheap.
It's very cheap. Yes, it is very, very cheap. I think it's $20 a month.
It's functionally free for like the value that a marketing department gets out of it.
Yes, as long as you're using it.
Oh yeah, and I mean, and that one subscription, especially if you only have a team of a few people, I've never ran into any kind of login, like too many login issues. They're not doing the Netflix thing where they're trying to police people, and they have awesome templates that are super easy to customize and change out, so you don't. A lot of people, especially again these small departments, a lot of people that are doing the marketing, they're not marketing people, right? They are the owner's wife or the owner or one of the salespeople. And for somebody who doesn't have a background in marketing or digital design, a blank canvas can be a terrifying thing to look at. So when tools like these have all these built-in templates, again, it's just a time-saving tool. And I think that really is your biggest constraint. Marketing for a small business is going to be time.
Yeah, I mean, you got to find ways to use any kinds of resources you can to save a moment in time. Because, I mean, marketing historically has been asked to do a lot. And so you have to find ways to streamline and improve.
All right, well, I think we kind of are coming to the end of our discussion here. Based on what we've been talking about so far, is there anything else that you kind of wanted to share with the audience or final thoughts that you wanted to leave them with?
If you are interested in artificial intelligence and leveraging artificial intelligence, my buzzword of the day is going to be prompt engineering. It's a fairly new field since the advent of artificial intelligence, and it's been really picking up over the last year. Understanding the fundamentals of prompt engineering, or even just watching a few videos about it, understanding the structure of how to communicate with an AI model to get good, consistent results is incredibly powerful.
Break that down for the audience too, because when you're talking about prompt engineering, you're talking about what you're putting in.
Yes, yeah. So how are you going to communicate with the AI model? So think of it like this. You're going to give the AI model a role, maybe a series of tasks, and then the goal and outcome that you're looking to get. And a lot of the times that I've seen is people will create templates or processes that they can then copy and paste. And I know you and I have talked about this. It's a great way to get repetitive results over a period of time, especially if you're creating, maybe you're wanting to make sure your social media tone is correct, or you're wanting to get a certain amount of examples to be able to review and then give human intervention or feedback into. It's a way to get repeated results, save yourself some time, and understand how to get just a good flow going with these AI models.
To give kind of an example of that, and he's right, this is something that we had a big conversation about at that alumni event, was the AI only knows what it knows, and it's going to make a lot of assumptions unless you tell it otherwise. So, for example, if I'm using AI to help me with a marketing project here at Sage, well, off the bat, Sage capitalizes Sage, S-A-G-E, in everything we do. And part of why we do that is because there is another company called Sage that's in they're a software company, but they're just in a totally different market, both in terms of who they sell and what their product is. But if I just tell the AI I need a video for this new feature for Sage, it's going to assume more that payroll processing company. So I used to have, and this is what we talked about, I had a note document saved on my desktop that was just this big paragraph that goes, I work for this company called Sage. It is stylized this way. We are not this other company. This is what we do. Yeah. These are who our customers are, and this is content from our website that explains what our messaging is and what our tone is. And when you start your prompt with that, your results are going to be better. Now, since we had that conversation, I'm sure other AI tools do this too, but Gemini has added this feature called Gems, where it's essentially that. I create a gem, and I have a Sage Projects gem, and you put in a description of the gem, and I put exactly that. And I say, when I'm using this gem, I'm working on a project for work, and this is who I work for, and this is what we do, and this is what it's like, so that I don't have to copy and paste it every single time.
Yeah, which is brilliant. I mean, you just got to give it context. You're exactly right. If there's no context, it can't give you the best result. And that's pretty cool. I didn't even know that. That's a great nugget of information.
One of the best tips I've gotten from anybody on prompt engineering, use AI. Be like, this is a prompt that I'm going to give an AI model. What do you think of it? Can you help me improve it?
Yeah. If someone's overwhelmed with even going into that kind of realm or kind of trying to communicate with it, it's a great first step. It's like, help me understand you. Help me communicate better with you.
We have this built into one of our AI tools. We have an image generator. So people that use our web hosting services can generate images for their blogs, and it makes really high quality images. And there's this thing where if you've ever used the Sage AI image generator, there's a box at the top where you type in what you want the image to be. And then there's a box at the bottom that starts off blank. So you type in your prompt, you click generate, and our software has prompt engineering built in where it improves your prompt before it goes to the image generator. And it'll show you in that bottom box what the improved prompt looks like. So if you want to refine it further, you can take that and then refine that. So
it's getting smarter and smarter.
It is super cool.
Yeah.
All right, William. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. It was awesome to get to meet you at that event, and I'm really glad that you were able to come in and kind of share your story and expertise with our audience.
It was an absolute privilege.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody. If you're not already, make sure you're subscribed to the podcast. And if you want to join us, we do live streams once a month of some episodes. Head to go.sageworld.com/podcast to register to join us on that Zoom, and we'll see you there.